In this episode, we begin with a simple idea that can change the way a brand new learner approaches the Certified in Cybersecurity (CC) exam from day one. Many students hear the word blueprint and imagine a stiff document full of exam language, domain names, and dry statements that seem far removed from real learning. What matters more is that a blueprint is really a map of what the certification expects you to understand, recognize, and judge under pressure. Once you hear it that way, the whole thing becomes less intimidating because you are no longer staring at a wall of requirements. You are learning how to read the map before you start the journey, and that makes the rest of your study time feel more focused, more calm, and much more intentional. A spoken learning path then takes that map and turns it into a route you can actually follow with your ears, your attention, and your growing security judgment. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at CyberAuthor.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A blueprint is not the exam itself, and that is one of the first misunderstandings new learners need to clear away. The blueprint tells you the kinds of knowledge and thinking the certification is built around, but it does not hand you the exact questions, the exact wording, or a magical list of facts to memorize. It is better to think of it as the outline of the playing field, because it shows what kinds of decisions the exam cares about and what kinds of topics are considered essential for an entry-level security professional. That matters because beginners often study in a scattered way, jumping from one interesting security idea to another without a clear sense of what belongs at the center. The blueprint brings order to that confusion by saying these are the areas that count. These are the ideas you must be able to explain, and these are the judgments you should be prepared to make when the question puts you in a basic security situation. When you decode the structure of a blueprint, you begin by noticing that it usually moves from broad areas down into smaller expectations. At the top, there are major knowledge areas, often called domains, and each one groups related ideas that belong together for a reason. Under those broad areas, you usually find objectives, concepts, or statements that point to what a learner should know, understand, or apply at a basic level. This layered design matters because it prevents you from treating security as a random collection of trivia facts. Instead, you begin to see that each large area has a purpose, each smaller point supports that area, and each point connects to decisions that a real security practitioner would face. For a new learner, that creates a powerful mental shift because you stop asking what should I memorize next and start asking what bigger idea is this concept serving inside the overall certification map. Another key part of decoding the blueprint is understanding that every topic inside it does not carry the same role in your learning. Some topics are anchors, meaning they help support many other concepts and appear again and again in different forms. Other topics are connectors, meaning they help you understand how one area of security affects another, even if they are not the first terms people think about when they imagine cybersecurity. A beginner who cannot tell anchors from connectors often studies in a flat way, giving equal energy to everything, and then feeling overwhelmed by the sheer amount of content. A better approach is to notice which ideas act like a compass for the rest of the material, because those ideas deserve repeated listening, slower reflection, and stronger recall. When you hear the blueprint through that lens, it becomes easier to recognize why some concepts must feel natural in your mind before more detailed concepts can truly make sense. The language inside a certification blueprint also deserves careful attention, because the verbs often tell you more than the nouns. If a blueprint expects you to identify, compare, recognize, distinguish, or understand something, those words hint at the level of thinking the exam is likely to expect. A new learner sometimes sees a long topic list and assumes the goal is deep technical mastery, but the blueprint may actually be asking for clear judgment, correct interpretation, and solid beginner-level reasoning rather than advanced specialist skill. That distinction can save a student from wasting enormous time on details that sound impressive but do not match the level of the certification. It also helps you listen better when you study, because you are no longer trying to collect every possible fact. You are listening for what a concept means, why it matters, how it differs from nearby concepts, and how to recognize the safer or more responsible choice when a question presents a simple work-related scenario. This is where the spoken learning path becomes so valuable, especially for learners who are new to both cybersecurity and certification-style studying. A blueprint on paper is a map, but a spoken path turns that map into movement, sequence, rhythm, and repetition. Instead of meeting every topic as an isolated label, you hear one idea introduced, then connected to a second idea, then revisited later after your understanding is a little stronger. That approach mirrors how real understanding often develops in the human mind, because most people do not truly learn by memorizing disconnected definitions. They learn by hearing patterns, noticing relationships, and returning to the same ideas with slightly better context each time. Audio-first teaching can make that process feel more natural, because the learner is guided through the logic of the material instead of being left alone to guess which topic should come first, and which topic only becomes clear after something else is already in place. A strong spoken learning path does not simply read the blueprint out loud in the same order it appears on the page. Good instruction translates the structure into a sequence that a human beginner can actually absorb and remember. That means starting with ideas that provide orientation, then moving into concepts that build judgment, and only after that layering in distinctions that are easier to understand once the basics are stable. Think of it the way a guide leads someone through a new city. A guide does not begin by naming every street, building code, and transit rule all at once. A guide first helps you understand where you are, what the main areas mean, how the pieces relate, and what landmarks will keep you from getting lost. In the same way, the spoken path for CC should help you feel the overall shape of security thinking before it asks you to hold many specific terms in memory, because shape gives meaning to detail. One reason beginners benefit from this approach is that cybersecurity language can sound heavier than it really is when it first reaches your ears. Terms seem formal, responsibilities sound broad, and categories may blur together until everything feels equally abstract. A spoken path can soften that problem by repeatedly bringing concepts back to plain meaning, simple judgment, and real workplace logic rather than technical drama. For example, when you hear how a control supports risk reduction, or how an access decision connects to accountability, the concept stops being just a term on a page and starts becoming part of a practical story about protecting people, systems, and information. That is especially important in an entry-level certification, because the goal is not to turn the learner into a specialist overnight. The goal is to build a reliable foundation so that when terms appear later in other domains, they already carry some meaning, some context, and some memory instead of arriving like strangers every time. Another way to decode the blueprint is to realize that it is designed around recurring themes, not isolated islands. Security principles appear in one area, then show up again through risk, governance, access, operations, continuity, and human behavior. A new learner may think each domain is a separate box to finish and forget, but the stronger perspective is that the domains keep talking to each other. That is why spoken learning matters so much. When ideas are taught through narration, the instructor can carry a concept forward, remind you where you saw it before, and show you how it takes on slightly different meaning in a different context. This repeated linking helps the learner build a mental web instead of a stack of flashcards. A web is stronger because it gives you more than recall. It gives you recognition, and recognition is often what helps you stay calm when a question seems unfamiliar on the surface, but is really testing a familiar judgment underneath. Beginners also need to understand that a blueprint is as much about boundaries as it is about coverage. It tells you what belongs inside your study universe, but it also quietly tells you what does not need to become your obsession right now. That is a huge relief if you have ever looked at the wider cybersecurity field and felt buried by endless tools, threats, platforms, and specialist paths. The certification blueprint is not asking you to master the entire industry before you earn an entry-level credential. It is drawing a line around the foundational thinking that matters most at this stage. A spoken learning path reinforces that boundary in a healthy way by focusing your attention on understanding rather than wandering. When narration keeps returning to the same core ideas from different angles, it teaches you something subtle but powerful. It teaches you that early success comes from depth of basic judgment, not from trying to impress yourself with the broadest possible collection of random security facts. It is also helpful to think about how a learner should listen when following a spoken path built from the blueprint. Passive hearing is not enough, because sound can wash over you without leaving much behind. Active listening means asking yourself simple questions as concepts appear, such as what problem this idea is trying to solve, what risk it is trying to reduce, what related concept it might be confused with, and how it fits inside the broader security picture. That kind of internal dialogue turns audio into a mental workout without requiring a screen or keyboard. Over time, this habit changes how you process information. You stop treating each paragraph as something to survive and start treating each concept as something to place on the map. Once that happens, repeated listening becomes far more productive because every return pass helps strengthen the position of those ideas in your memory instead of forcing you to start from zero each time. There is also a major emotional benefit to decoding the blueprint early, and new learners should not underestimate it. Uncertainty drains energy faster than difficulty does, because people can work hard when they understand the shape of the challenge, but they often shut down when the challenge feels shapeless. The blueprint reduces that shapelessness by showing that the certification has boundaries, themes, expectations, and a logic that can be understood. The spoken path then adds encouragement through structure because it says you do not have to solve the whole certification all at once. You only need to follow the next meaningful concept, connect it to the last one, and keep building. That mindset protects against the common beginner mistake of measuring progress only by how many facts feel perfectly memorized. Real progress often looks quieter than that. It looks like clearer distinctions, steadier recognition, and a stronger ability to hear a scenario and sense which security principle is probably at the center of it. As your learning continues, the blueprint should begin to feel less like an outside document and more like an internal framework you carry in your head. You start hearing a topic and intuitively knowing where it belongs, what it relates to, and why the exam designers would care about it. That is one of the clearest signs that the spoken learning path is working. You are no longer collecting content in a pile. You are organizing it by meaning, relationship, and purpose. This internal organization becomes especially helpful when a question uses unfamiliar wording, because you can rely on your conceptual map rather than panic over the exact phrasing. A well-built learner does not need every sentence to sound familiar. That learner needs the underlying logic to feel familiar. When the blueprint has truly been decoded, even a new scenario can be approached with calm, because the structure in your mind helps you locate the idea, narrow the possibilities, and choose the answer that best reflects foundational security reasoning. That is why the earliest stage of study is not just about content exposure. It is about building orientation before pressure increases. Once you understand the blueprint as a structured map and the spoken path as a guided route through that map, your study sessions stop feeling random and start feeling cumulative. Each listening pass adds something, whether that is a stronger definition, a better distinction, a more accurate connection, or a calmer reaction to a tricky-sounding concept. The value of this approach is not just academic. It trains your mind to approach security topics with order and intention, which is exactly the habit a foundational certification wants to see. You are learning to think in categories, weigh meaning, and recognize relationships rather than merely repeating terms. That habit will keep helping you long after this one certification, because solid security learning is always built on understanding how ideas fit together before it moves toward more advanced technical depth. As we close, keep hold of the central insight that the 2026 CC Blueprint is not a wall standing in your way. It is a map showing where the certification wants your attention, and the spoken learning path is the route that makes that map usable for a real beginner. When you know how to read the structure, hear the relationships, and focus on meaning rather than noise, the certification becomes far more approachable. You do not need to begin as a security expert to succeed here. You need a clear sense of direction, a patient learning rhythm, and a willingness to build judgment one connected idea at a time. That is the mindset that turns a blueprint from something intimidating into something practical. It also sets up everything that follows, because once the map is clear, each new topic has a place to land, and each lesson becomes part of a larger security picture that you can steadily carry forward.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.